Here's part 2 for the video lecture on substance abuse for Sissonville High School. We could spend a lot of time talking about all the different types of illegal drugs. I'm just going to try to hit on some of the major categories of drugs, the ones that are probably the most commonly used within our society today, especially amongst juveniles and adolescents and people your age. We'll start with alcohol. Again, we remember our discussion of alcohol just in the first video. 75% of all high school seniors have tried it at least once. And I would guess that that's probably a little low even. But at any rate, alcohol is dangerous because it relaxes inhibitions. People generally have these walls and these sort of boundaries that they don't cross when they're not drunk, when they're not intoxicated. Problem with alcohol is it relaxes those boundaries, those inhibitions. People are more likely to do things, to say things that they would never do or say if they were not intoxicated. So that can bring with it a lot of problems, obviously. Adolescent use of alcohol is linked to fighting, property damage, academic failure, occupational job problems, as well as conflicts with law enforcement officials. Also, alcohol contributes to nearly 100,000 deaths every single year. Tobacco. We could also talk a lot about tobacco. It's not illegal for adults, just like alcohol is not illegal for adults. It's still a problem, and a lot of the tobacco industry has been accused of marketing their products to children and to adolescents. It often begins, tobacco use often begins in adolescence and turns to abuse often in adolescence. Tobacco abuse, use, whatever you want to say, contributes to almost 500,000 deaths every single year. And tobacco, we're talking, especially in West Virginia, epidemic problems in middle schools and high schools with tobacco use. It's hard for me to go into a boys' restroom or a men's restroom in a high school and not see tobacco everywhere in the stalls and on the floor. So it's certainly a problem. Marijuana. It's the next illegal drug we could talk about. Now, illegal, I say that kind of with caution because we already have 2 states, Colorado and Washington, that have already legalized marijuana. I suspect in the next 5 to 10 years, every state in this country will either have legalized or decriminalized marijuana. Talk about that later. But marijuana is produced from the leaves cannabis. It is a mild hallucinogen. Smoking it in small amounts can lead to an early stimulation or excitement and then to a feeling of drowsiness. Smoking it in large or copious amounts can lead to distortions in auditory perceptions as well as distortions in visual perception. So it can make you hallucinate just a little bit if you do a whole lot of it. Cocaine. People still do use cocaine, believe it or not. It probably was at its height of popularity in the 1980s and the early 1990s. People still use it, though, and abuse it, and are dependent upon it. Cocaine is a powder derivative of the coca plant. When introduced in 1860, it was considered to be a medical breakthrough that was thought to be able to treat depression and fatigue. So it was seen as a medicine that could treat, mental illnesses and physical ailments. We pretty quickly learned that this drug was dangerously addictive, so the government began controlling it in 1906, and very shortly after that it became illegal. Cocaine produces the following effects. Extreme mood elevation. People who use cocaine, their mood tends to elevate very, very, very quickly. They can become very, very happy. They can become very, very agitated or angry, but there's an elevation. Often they feel elation or euphoria. They feel it's the opposite of depression or despondent. They just feel absolutely fantastically fabulous, on top of the world. Grandiose feelings. They may feel like they can lift cars or jump off of buildings or fly without like an airplane or anything. So, and that's obviously dangerous. Heightened physical prowess. Again, they feel like they can perform superhuman feats physically. They can lift buildings or lift cars or things of that sort. So all of these are pretty dangerous things. Snorting cocaine is the most common method of use. Freebasing is another common method where you actually smoke the crystals of cocaine. If you use it intravenously, that's IV use. It's very powerful. 15 to 20 seconds it's in your system. Speedballing was another way that people could, and do use cocaine. This is intravenous use of cocaine in combination with another drug at the same time. You guys are too young to remember, but your parents would remember actor John Belushi. He was a star on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s and the 80s, and he actually died from speedballing. Ask your parents, they'll know who John Belushi is. Also, Chris Farley, if you remember him from Saturday Night Live, he also died pretty much the same way. So maybe you know that name a little bit more. I don't know. Methamphetamine. I could do a lot of before and after pictures of people who have used meth. You could probably see them. You've probably seen them online. I've seen people come into the prisons and the jails on meth, and it's really just horrific what they look like. It just eats away at their skin, their teeth. They look terrible. But it's still a very popular drug, especially in West Virginia. It's a synthetic drug that is very addictive, highly addictive stimulant is methamphetamine. In the U.S., almost 15 million Americans over the age of 12. That's roughly 6% of the entire population reported using this drug at least once. With juveniles and adolescents, juvenile court judges report growing numbers of adolescents appearing in court due to the manufacture, sale, and or use of this drug. So it's a huge, huge problem in Appalachia, a big problem in West Virginia, even still. Youth use of illegal drugs in the United States by age, 2007 statistics. These are age ranges, and percentage of those people in those age ranges reporting using illegal drugs of any kind in the last month. When you poll 12 to 13-year-old children, 3.3% report that they'd used something illegal in the last month. When you get into the 14 to 15 age range group, almost 9% of those children reported using illegal drugs in the last month. Then we get into 16 to 17-year-old age group. Some of you are 17, I suspect. 16% of you in your age group reported using drugs in the last month. The highest group is probably the group that a lot of you are in. A lot of you are probably 18 years old or pretty close. 18 to 20-year-olds, 21.6%. That's over, what's the math? That's over 1 in 5 if you want to look at it that way too. Reported using drugs in the last month that were illegal. Then it starts to tail off when you get to 21 to 25. It goes down to 18.5%, and the older people get, the less likely they are to be using or report using illegal drugs. So, factors that make young people a high risk for later substance use or abuse after they use for the first time include the following: early initiation, use of any drug at all by the age of 10 to 12. You stand a higher risk, or these children stand a higher risk for continuing to use or abuse at a later time. School problems, low grades, truancy, behavior problems, all of these things correlate with illegal substance abuse and or use. That's not to say if you make low grades or have behavior problems that you're automatically going to be using drugs. The two just seem to be related very closely. They're good predictors. They're not guaranteed, but they're good predictors. Family problems. Children who lack parental support, and also children who lack any parental guidance, are more likely to keep using or sustain their substance use, which could turn into abuse after they first use it or initially use whatever they're using. A few more peer influences. This is a big deal as well. Relationships with peers who use illegal drugs will increase the chances that you'll use. I guess I kind of stand in stark contrast. I'm the exception to that. Most, if not all, of my friends were using something at one time or another, and I never have. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying. It just, so maybe there's hope for those of us who have not used. But that tends to be the way it is. You tend to be like the people you hang out with. You tend to have similar goals, interests, engage in similar activities. Also, adolescents, young people who are unable to resist negative peer influence. So we're down to peer pressure. If Joe jumps off a bridge, will you do it? Well, that's what people would always ask me when I was young. If somebody else does something stupid, do you have to do it? Well, no. But a lot of times we feel like we have to be cool or to fit in, or whatever the reason might be. Personality. People who tend to be non-conforming. People who tend to not want to follow the rules or want to fit into what society expects in any given situation, are at a higher risk for using illegal drugs and also abusing them later. Rebellion. Children and adolescents who tend to be rebellious are more likely to use or abuse illegal drugs. Also, children and adolescents who are strongly independent are at a higher risk for using illegal drugs and or alcohol and developing symptoms of abuse or dependence. And we'll call that the end of part 2 for the substance abuse video lecture. Thank you.